Hi, I'm Ian Dille with FloBikes.
And I am Michael Sheehan, resident friend of Ian.
And this is your FloBikes Giro d'Italia special. We are going to be recapping the Tour of the Alps. This is an important warm-up race for the Giro d'Italia. We saw some of the top contenders for the Giro d'Italia at this race: Fabio Aru, Thibaut Pinot, Chris Froome. We're gonna go through their performances at this race, what we saw, what it means for the Giro d'Italia, and end with some takeaways of that we can look forward to in about 2 weeks.
Yeah, so let's get started. First thing we saw really when we tuned in on stage one was FDJ leading up the climb, full team time trial. They basically pushed Team Sky out of the way, and you don't do that. Team Sky is like kind of known as the team that rides really hard up the climb.
No, it's totally true. Like, you tune in and you expect to see Team Sky with 11 guys on the front. I know only 9 are allowed to enter the race, but it always seems like they have 11 or 12 just ripping the field apart. And you tune in and you see FDJ on the front on a mountain pass, and you're like, this is weird.
Yeah, and what that said instantly is that they knew that their team leader, Thibaut Pinot, had some flying form, and he went on throughout the week to show that. He attacked stage one, got a good result, didn't get the leader's jersey, but 2 days later he got it in stage 3 and never let it go through the end of the race. So they definitely knew Pinot had the form, and we'll see if he takes that into the Giro.
Yeah, and this was an interesting race too, because we saw there was no time trial. There was only one mountaintop finish, and so every day ended up in these small bunch finishes, like 6 to 8 guys, and just really exciting attacking finishes. And Pinot essentially won the race on time bonuses just through consistent podium finishes, and just getting 5 seconds here, 10 seconds there on Froome and Domenico Pozzovivo.
Yeah, I would say he was hands down the strongest guy in the race, and of all the climbers, he has the best sprint. So if it comes down to any kind of dash for the line amongst those climbers, I have my money on Pinot.
Yeah, and then as far as takeaways from this race, this was the return of Astana.
2015 Astana.
If anybody remembers the Giro d'Italia 2015 Astana, they basically lit up the race like they were all riding motorcycles on the front of the peloton. So they came to the Tour of the Alps with, and it looked like their A team: Miguel Angel Lopez, Pello Bilbao, Luis Sanchez, and
a couple guys we hadn't even heard of who were right up there. The last name Hurt, which Jan Hurt and Andre Zeitz.
Yeah, and they ended up with 5 in the top 14.
Yeah, I have no idea who those guys are, but all 5 of them made the lead group on stage 1, and yeah, they won that stage. They won, how many stages did they get?
3 out of 5.
Yeah, 3 out of 5 stages, and yeah, 5 in the top 15 overall. So Astana is looking formidable going into the Giro.
Yeah,
none of those guys, I would say, were the strongest rider in the team in the race, but collectively, that is a strong team right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see with the strength of their team how they go up against some of these one-man shows at the Giro. Obviously Sunweb and Sky have strong teams in and of themselves, but they're all based around Chris Froome and Tom Dumoulin. So if Sky puts, Lopez or Bilbao off the front, that's somebody that the other teams can't let roll. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out at the Giro. You tipped your hat to a young rider we should keep our eye on in the future.
Yeah, Ben O'Connor, 22-year-old Australian. On stage 3, he had the ride of his life so far. He was up the road, got caught by Froome on the descent, then just attacked again. Froome hesitated, and he was gone. He rode the last 8K of stage 3 at 10 seconds ahead of the field and just ripping time trial to the finish. So that was incredible ride by Ben O'Connor. He went on to win the Young Riders jersey.
Yeah, I loved your note that Froome came up and congratulated him after winning that stage, and he never had a conversation with Froome, and just being 22 and winning a stage at the Tour of the Alps, which isn't even a World Tour race, it's still only a UCI 2.HC. Having a 3-time Tour de France rider come up and say, hey, that was a heck of a ride, was a big deal for him.
Yeah, absolutely. He did a little interview about that, and he's in that transition stage from watching these guys on TV to actually being like, oh man, I can race with them and I can maybe beat them. So yeah. That's cool. Keep your eye on him. And then speaking of Froome.
Oh my gosh, his attacks we saw classic Froome. I don't know what he does to wind up his attack. It's like he shifts to like 2 gears easier and just ups his cadence to like 120 RPM.
Yeah.
And you just see everybody like starting to queue up on his wheel, like, oh, here he goes. And he had some ferocious attacks.
He's like a little wind-up toy, and all of a sudden he's just like looking at his stem, and it's like say faster and faster. He's doing like 130 RPM up the mountain, and strung out. He is. I would have to say, watching him race, he seemed really relaxed this week. I don't think that he was just gunning for this race as the end-all be-all. He is very much in his preparation for the Giro. I would say, I was asking you your thoughts about the matter, if he cares more about the Giro this year than the Tour.
I don't see how anybody could care more about the Giro than the Tour, but I did like your point that maybe it's more important that he wins 3 Grand Tours in a row, which has never been done. The Tour, the Vuelta, and the Giro, as opposed to doing the Giro Tour double. Mm-hmm. It'll be interesting to see what sort of preparation and form he shows up to the Giro with. I mean, knowing Froome and the amount of diligence that he puts into preparing for these races, I can't imagine that he's not doing every single thing he needs to do to come and win the Giro, and maybe the Tour is an afterthought this year.
Yeah, and I will say, just big difference between Froome and Pinot. Pinot, for all intents and purposes, seems to be on the form of his life right now, whereas Froome, I think that he's still got about 5% in the tank that he hasn't tapped into.
Well, yeah, you made the good point in the last stage where Pinot's wearing the jersey. They're doing what will be the World Championship course in Innsbruck, Australia later this year, and Pinot's still attacking Froome and dropping Froome on the climbs. And all he needs to do is follow wheels, but he's still giving it to Froome, maybe just because he can.
Yeah, Pinot had to do absolutely nothing, but he just was hammering all week long. So he's got the form. I will be very interested and kind of surprised to see if he can hold it into the 3rd week of the Giro right now, because I don't know how much more fast he can get.
Well, the other sort of tie back to the Tour of the Alps and Team Sky is that they have won the last 4 editions of this race. Mm-hmm. They've come into the Tour of the Alps, this pre-Giro prep race. Geraint Thomas won it, Mikel Landa, Richie Porte. And so they've come into this race and won it and dominated it, but they've never won the Giro. They've always flamed out at the Giro. So maybe Chris Froome and the team looked at that. Maybe we should bring our preparation into Alps a little bit differently, and hopefully maybe they'll see results at the Giro. And let's talk about what does this mean for the Giro? What can we anticipate seeing at the Giro? I thought you had an interesting takeaway about George Bennett and what his performance at the Alps means for the Giro.
Yeah, my heart broke with George Bennett last year when he had to pull out of the Tour. He was just absolutely flying, found himself in the top 10 of the Tour last year, I think, after the first week. And he was climbing with the best of them, and then it was like, stage 14, he started to crumble a little bit, and he ended up having to pull out because he had the flu, and that sucked. That was his first Grand Tour where it was like, holy cow, he is coming into the potential that we've seen over the last few years. So I think that the Giro this year is going to be his redemption. I'm calling a top 5. I'm calling a top 5 finish for the Kiwi.
I'd like to see a podium. I mean, I feel like it's, if you can be in the top 5 at the Giro or at the Tour, then maybe he could do a podium at the Giro. I mean, we'll see. But yeah, he's the winner of the Tour of California from 2017, and yeah, top 5 would be huge for him at the Giro, and yeah, we'll keep an eye on him for sure. And then, you know, the other thing is, from what we saw of Froome and his attacks sort of in the high mountains, is there anything that can stop him at the Giro? Can Dumoulin take him down? You know, can team tactics from Astana be a factor? What is the one thing that could stop Froome from winning the Giro?
Probably the Court of Arbitration for Sport.
He does have this little matter of a doping positive hanging over his head. The latest on that is that his doping case has been sent to the CAS, and to my knowledge, there hasn't been a date set as to when that will be arbitrated and a penalty will be handed down. But yeah, we'll see if he even makes it to the Giro, or that if he receives a ban halfway through. I mean, it's quite the unsettling situation for him.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know how he's riding so well. I would be a nervous wreck if I had that hanging over my head. So he's a pro bike racer, and I guess what else is he going to do? So he's going to keep racing until they say otherwise.
Yeah, no, it's mind-boggling, and it's just adds another layer of complexity and intrigue to the Giro d'Italia 2018, which you can watch on FloBikes live and replay May 4th through the 27th. And we will be back with more Ian and Friends Giro d'Italia specials.
Thanks for joining.
See you later.